Hello and welcome to Do the Right Thing, your weekly writing prompt podcast. I'm Alexandra.
And I'm Jarvis.
Jarvis and I were aspiring writers with one simple and very common problem. We never actually took the time to sit down and write.
Exactamundo. So, to solve this main issue, we are issuing a challenge. Each week, we sit down and write a complete short story using 3 or 4 randomly generated words.
Then we come on the podcast, we read a story, we talk about what we learned in reading it, and then we talk about the rest of the story sent in by you wonderful listeners.
Exactly. We're simply here to help you do the right thing.
A Doof Media production. I always feel, especially with that last part, because I talk so fast, that I'm going to stumble over my words, and I'm always so proud of myself for not. I feel like I'm barely catching up with my speaking, basically. It's fun.
Yeah, well, I think it's because, actually, we were literally just talking about this. We've been doing this for 3 years. We're almost to episode 150, and we've kept the same intro for most of it. I think honestly, only the first 3 we were really trying different intros. Yeah,
and well, we really engineered this one to have all the information in it without it being too annoyingly complicated. Yeah, because we have so many numbers. It's 30 minutes, 3 out of 4 randomly generated words. That's a lot. So
that is a lot. And I think even still, we've also talked about how we could possibly make changes to it again, but we just never did. And apparently it's working. I'm surprised that we actually haven't just decided to pre-record a stock intro.
Oh, I'm very glad
just
we didn't
copy
do that.
And paste it, huh?
I'm very glad we didn't do that. That sounds, I don't know, mechanical. I don't like it.
Very mechanical. Cutting corners, they say.
Yeah, basically. So I wrote a little story myself, which I'm not reading on this podcast because it wasn't related to the challenge. But I wrote a little story the other day too, and I wrote it in response to I was watching this video by this YouTube essayist Lily Alexander.
I love her.
Wait, you know her too?
Yeah, Lily Alexander. She's great.
She's super new too. Yeah. Have you seen the recent one about this poem that she found on Wikipedia?
No, but here, I'm actually just gonna look her up. Yeah. First search result.
Yeah, no, she's great. I'm so glad because she popped out of nowhere with a video what was Mogai, I think it was, and that's what made her kind of blow up. And then she just had a couple more videos, but they haven't been as exploding as that first one, which is too bad because she's wonderful.
I think the first one that got me into her was this one right here. TERFs are wrong about biological sex, and she's talking about J.K. Rowling and all that. So it's really, really good. I've been getting really deep into video essayists that cover books. There's this other one. Fuck, let me see if I can find her. But basically, she does this thing to where she will cover Republican books where there was this one where there was this kid who was a Christian on a liberal college campus.
Nice.
And he was the only one stopping all of the woke movement people from taking over the world.
Those terrorists. Yep.
Yeah, but then also there was a school shooting at this school, and the writer made it a point to show how every single last one of those liberal people who were talking about freedom of speech, we need to protect trans kids, how they were sort of cowering in fear, and it was up to John Republican to beat up the school shooters.
Nice. Yeah, well, good. I'm glad that there is reviews of important literature of our time. But yeah, so what was good about it is that I watched it, and I felt like I got inspiration out of it. Watching a YouTube essayist, and it's something I've been kind of missing. I think it shows up in those kind of reviews stuff too. but maybe that's why I haven't been writing as much. I just haven't been like taking in the kind of content that like, I don't know, inspires me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is very true. I mean, I feel the same way when it comes to film. Like I really
Mm-hmm.
haven't been watching any films that mean something beyond just entertainment. Uh, for one reason, don't really have the time, and also it's a huge commitment when I could just watch shitty reality TV forever. But recently, I saw this movie that was called. It was a French New Wave film,
Ooh,
similar
okay.
to like Hiroshima Mon Amour.
I don't know anything
Um,
about that, but it sounds
yeah,
cool.
well, yeah, it's a pretty great black and white French film. But just by like watching it, I felt more inspired than I have in so long, and I guess that's because that's where my like creative core is, you know, in those sort of like strange and like weird films that really ask you to pay attention to every little thing because every little
Right.
thing ends up mattering, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think I get what you mean. Speaking of, let's get on. We're gonna make a bunch of doofovers. I've decided this is just gonna happen. We're gonna schedule
Yeah,
something right
I
after this
mean, hey,
call.
I'm already rewatching Neon Genesis. So
Hell yes. Yeah, actually, I matched with someone on Bumble that like in their bio was like how obsessed they are with Neon Genesis, and now I'm like conflicted because I'm like, I talked to them and they've clearly like thought a lot about the show, and I'd like to have them on the show, on ours, but also like I want to have Sebastian on it as well because we watched it together and we had thoughts about it, and I want to have you on it because obviously it's doofovers. And like four people is kind of it's kind of crowded, right?
four people is possible,
Yeah,
but this person that you matched on Tinder, do you think that they can do a podcast?
I think so. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I think they don't do phone calls, so that might be a
What?
barrier.
Wait,
Yeah,
what?
well, that's really common actually. There's like it's like 70% of the people that I talk to just like
They
can't
don't do
do
phone
phone calls.
calls?
Yeah, because they just get really, really anxious, which is like relatable, but it's man, it's a bummer.
Well,
As someone who
yeah,
like
I
needs verbal communication to feel a connection with someone.
mm-hmm. And then, I don't know, like I get that and I respect that. But I don't know. It's like, yeah, you can feel anxious during the call, but like even if like there's purpose in the call, like so these people just don't do phone calls because I
Whenever
haven't
they
heard that.
can
Yeah,
avoid it.
wow,
Yeah.
okay, I get that. Yeah, I mean, granted, I prefer to like get a text, you know,
Mm-hmm.
but I
Yeah.
don't know. That
Yeah.
is interesting. Well, hey,
It's a bummer.
maybe we can take them. Even better. You invite them over on a
Mm-hmm.
nice little cute date.
Mm-hmm.
You make a nice spaghetti platter,
Okay.
loving it, and then
Mm-hmm.
I come in
Candles.
slowly behind them, candles, and then
Mm-hmm.
I slowly creep in
Mm-hmm.
with my scalpel and
Okay.
my flash drive, and then you
Uh-huh.
turn off the lights, and
Okay.
then we open up that brain, put it on a
Mm.
flash drive, and
Right.
then upload them onto my laptop so that they can
Uh-huh.
talk through the
Okay.
computer without being on a phone call.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
I'll think about it.
Okay,
For
sure.
sure. For
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Are you trained in that? In inserting flash drives into people's skulls?
I
Also, can you question.
yes.
Can you open someone's skull with a scalpel? I feel like the bone is too much. I mean,
You
maybe
will
if
be
you
able
like go
to
with the right
scalp
angle,
them.
but
You'll be able to scalp them, but then yeah, you would definitely need like a bone saw to like
yeah.
crack it
Yeah.
open. But
Yeah.
I can't say too much because I've been sworn to secrecy by one of the many U.S. government organizations.
Wow, that's really vague. Was it the Department of Agriculture?
Close, very close. They normally share the same office, but they have completely different duties.
Parks and Wildlife?
You're even closer.
Okay, I
Think
ran
like
out.
above wildlife.
Nah, I don't know enough organizations, and I'm bored of this.
Okay, well,
It's
it
okay.
was
Well, do you want to
the
reveal your
it was
answer?
yes, it was the Men in Black. It's fine though.
Oh, wait, what? What? How was I supposed to guess that?
Because they work in the same department. In the first Men in Black film, Will
Uh huh.
Smith walks into a non-descript building that looks like
Okay.
a normal office building, but then he goes into the elevator and presses the furthest down button. Bada bing, bada boom. He's in the Men in Black HQ
Okay. But like, what does that have to do with agriculture?
because they're in the same office.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't. Okay, that's fine. What were we talking about before? I had something clever to say, but it's gone now.
That makes one of us.
All right. What? What are the words of this podcast episode, Jarvis? Let's get into the actual meat, the meat and bones and fat and gristle and flesh of this
Mmm.
episode.
Meat, bones, fat, and gristle.
I love how I'm gonna have to edit the fire alarm out of this podcast.
That's great. If only I could do anything about it. But I actually had them come in and check it because it is normally just batteries, but they checked it and they said, "Oh yeah, it's fine. It shouldn't be beeping,
But it is
but it is."
great.
But the words for this week are head, hold, acceptable, and orchestra.
And who are we reading this week?
This week we will be reading a lovely story by KomatoSoup with A Night at the Dullahan Orchestra.
Yeah. I quite like this one, so I'm excited to get into it.
Mm-hmm.
Traditions, Celia decided, usually existed for a reason. Sure, sometimes that reason could be as petty as have an opaque, ritualistic set of actions designed to discriminate against those who were not in the know. But even then, there was usually a kernel of sense in the how and why of said opaque, ritualistic set of actions. Servants of noble visiting families announced visitors with all their titles, not only as a grand vanity exercise, but also to avoid an awkward, "So, what was your name again?" situation. Tea ceremony emphasized specific hand placement and posture, not just to embody the epitome of grace, but to avoid situations like having the lid of a teapot very unceremoniously fall off in an overzealous pour. There was a chord of functionality that ran through the very marrow of tradition. So this too, this awkward notion of holding her own head in her hands for the duration of the whole orchestral performance, there was a reason behind it. It didn't make it any less annoying, though. "Sorry," whispered Else for the third time from the seat beside her. "It's a pretty important part of audience etiquette. I did warn you, it wasn't really made with humans in mind." Else, too, had her head in her hands, but, being a Dullahan, spoke from the relatively comfortable position of her own lap. "Don't worry about it," Celia whispered back, holding her head with both hands like her neck didn't exist. "I knew what I was getting myself into." This wasn't totally true, but Celia found that some expression of personal responsibility was usually enough to soothe her friend's concerns. As the Dullahans took the stage, Celia took in the differences. It was already a departure from human performances that the musicians were not already seated and ready behind some kind of curtain. The stage was bare, save for a single row of ornate stools serving as a sort of pedestal on which instruments were placed. "They make their stools themselves," said Ilse helpfully. "You probably can't tell from up here, but each one is uniquely forged." "Else?" "Oh, you're doing that weird thing where you try to figure out stuff on your own again? Sorry, I'll stop." Else fidgeted with her head as Celia tried to redirect her attention to the performers. Celia watched the rhythmic procession as each musician deposited their head on their individualized stool and took up their instrument. The point of giving up their head for an instrument seemed symbolic of a shift in focus. Though she was sure both parties would resent the comparison, It reminded Celia of something else she'd once seen before in a goblin cafe. There, it was the way of things to pay before eating. There was a whole bunch of other stuff mixed up in it that sort of muddled the example, like how you were expected to pull coins directly out of your pocket without looking or counting out the exact amount as a sort of monetary flex. But the part about it that reminded Celia, that struck a mental chord, was how you were supposed to place that money into the same metal tin that contained all the utensils. The tradition smacked of social ritual, a pointed giving up of one thing for another. "What occupies you?" asked Else nervously. "If you don't mind my asking." "Hands," Celia found herself saying. "Hands?" "Yeah, hands. There's a lot of emphasis there. Like, with humans, a lot of peaceful posturing and gestures of trust tend to focus on obviously open and empty palms." "That's, true. That's true of all of us, I should think. Elves, goblins, humans, and the like." "Sure, but there are nuances across species. Like how you hold your head in both hands instead of in the crook of your arm when you're talking to a professor." "It is rude to hold your head above someone else esteemed." "Right," Celia pointed at her. "Exactly. Stuff like that." "Celia!" Else looked embarrassed. "Oops." Celia returned her hands to her head, hoping no one around her had noticed. "So, what is it about hands and doula hands you were noticing?" "Hmm? Oh, I was just trying to figure out this whole audience keeping their hands on their head thing." Else nodded for her to continue. Are your are your orchestras rooted in some kind of martial tradition?" "We're Dullahans. Everything we do is rooted in martial tradition." "Point," said Celia. "Then, more specifically, is it tied to, like, important peace proceedings?" Elle stared at her. "You're getting that from hands." Celia smiled in triumph. "It's like what I was saying earlier. Hands. Look at what's happening. You place your head down, pick up your instrument, and then there's this, like, I don't know, this sense of performative vulnerability to it all. Very, look at me, I'm putting my head down and very deliberately busying them by doing something else. You guys don't usually put your heads down like that, right?" "No," Else shuffled awkwardly. "We don't like putting our heads down in public at all, if we can help it." "Yeah, because it's fundamentally a vulnerable thing to do. So it's like a mirroring thing. The performers make this big show of placing their heads down in a trustful, vulnerable position, and in respect of that, the audience parallels that by making sure that their hands are likewise occupied and concerned with being a good audience for the duration of the performance." "Hmm." Else gave Celia an apologetic look. "No, I don't think you're right." "No?" It was something Celia liked about Else that despite all her hemming and hawing, there was a core to her that would never flinch away from speaking truth as she saw it. "Well, it's like I said before. Dullahan culture tends to be martially coded by nature. Conversations are engagements. Celebrations are accolades. There's always a sense of posturing, of putting forward your best and most competent face. So, there's no way that we do something to deliberately signal weakness. That's just not how we are. Not how we're supposed to be, anyway." The music began. Loud horns and brass heralding a crash of sliding strings. The hall was awash with a rising, thrumming beat. It sounded like triumph. "So it's more the other way then," said Celia. "Bravado. Like, I'm so good and competent and whatnot with my music that I don't even need to hold onto my head while performing it." "That has more of the ring of truth to it," said Else, "but still totally wrong. I'm pretty sure it's just a Dullahan thing. Are you sure you don't want me to just tell you?" "Nah, I'm good." Else shuffled in her seat. As the music built, she kept sneaking glances at Celia. Finally, 2 songs in, it seemed she could hold it in no longer. "Why do you do this, Celia? Why do you overcomplicate things? Why don't you just ask? It can be..." Else bit her lip. "Some people might feel that what you do guessing and trying to ferret out aspects of culture that you know little about, it can look rude. I know it's rude. Also, Else shuffled a bit, somehow managing not to make a sound despite her heavy armor. You're wrong quite frequently, actually. People talk about it. Like that time that you asserted that Doc ate squirrel meat because historically goblins must have been hard pressed to hunt large game instead of, him being frugal and trying to make ends meet. Celia frowned. I don't mind being wrong. That's just part of the process. But why? The crashing tones transitioned on a dime, sliding into a soft resonance interspersed with ringing tines and bells. Celia turned to her friend. You know how I ended up at the university, right? It was something of a spectacle. Right. I appeared in that ray of light. No clothes, no memories, no nothing. Celia shrugged. I don't think I minded that part all that much. I don't know what my life was like before, so no real loss. I think I was excited more than anything. But then, of course, I had to figure stuff out. And ooh boy, Celia sighed. You have no idea how much I hated it. Asking over and over again how things worked, why things were the way they are. The soft pitting smile I'd get from everyone, like I was some sort of poor addled fool, a simpleton. Her voice took on a mocking tone. Yes, Celia, red crystals generate light. Blue crystals, no, those generate heat. No, of course they can't generate water. But yes, water is also blue. I can see why you got confused. Celia laughed bitterly. So, no, I'm done asking. I'm gonna buckle up, take in everything, and do the best that I can. And if I'm wrong sometimes, so be it. So be it. Else looked at Celia wide-eyed. Have I been treating you like that? Nah, you're good people, Else. Celia leaned over in her seat and bumped shoulders. After a moment, she felt Else do the same back. You're good people, too. They watched the rest of the performance with their arms touching. The music moved in and out of songs in a way that she was sure a more cultured person would appreciate, but felt to Celia like time was getting stretchy. As Celia closed her eyes, she could feel the music wash over her. The acoustics of the hall were quite nice, really. She could feel the music alive all around her, rumbling with vigor. It was in the air, the seats, and most tellingly of all, a comforting hum from just beside her. I think I figured it out, murmured Celia. You were right. I was overcomplicating things. I can feel it now. Oh? Without your head in the way, the sound travels into your armor. The music. I can feel it through your arm. It's echoing inside you. Celia's eyes felt heavy. She hoped it wasn't considered too rude to fall asleep. The music was just too calming. You're right, Else said from somewhere far away. She felt Else shift her weight to better support her. Good job. Celia smiled. It wasn't quite so hard, really, keeping her hands in place on her head. Not with a friend to lean on. Anyways.
This is a really nice story. I first of all love the setting, like a sort of it's a fantasy world with goblins and luas and like all other sorts of creatures, but there also seems some sort of remnants of the world that we live in, like a sort of normalcy. And I do love the speak throughout this of tradition. You really did decide to hit the nail on the head for this month, which by talking about tradition, talking about how one can push back against tradition and the consequences of that. I also really do enjoy how you decide to describe the music and how it's sort of layered in piece by piece without really dedicating a whole big paragraph to the sounds of the music, really allowing us as a reader to fill in the blanks as we're also focusing in on this really sweet and complicated relationship that our main character finds themselves in. So really good job.
Yeah, I definitely got a
Mm-hmm.
nuanced portrayal of their relationship, and you could kind of tell that they're multidimensional. I really like the background that we're getting revealed on Celia and Else as well. How Else is like polite and stuff, but also speaks the truth. And it like there's that moment after Celia explains her background where Else asks, "Have I been doing that?" Right. So concerned for her friend, right? And I think that's really sweet. And I like the complicated portrayal of Celia's motivations and such as well. Sort of them taking in like being okay with people thinking they're rude because they've just like faced so much rudeness themselves from asking questions and from being given answers, and this is
Mm-hmm.
just sort of them compensating for that. Um, and yeah, I like how that's sort of impacting their relationship, as well as just the exploration of tradition, as you said, is really interesting. And I think KomatoSoup did a really great job of um, exploring some of the origins, right? Talking about how, like, though it may seem really frilly and silly
Mm-hmm.
and like annoying at times, stuff that tradition does, and perhaps sometimes it is, there often is like a really good purpose. The tea thing actually felt really
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know. I have spilled tea before, and so like it makes sense why it's such a practice ritual thing to be so careful and graceful, because it's also about like social
Yeah,
safety
definitely,
kind of.
definitely. And I think that just goes to show like how the world building within this piece is really well struck. And I do, as I said before, love the sort of intersection between this world building and how that creates tradition. And I think that their relationship is definitely a nice grounds to explore other aspects of this world if the writer does choose to continue past this.
Yeah, I think it was definitely very interesting, the sort of world that's being built here. I did feel like I wanted like one more clue with what a Dullahan is. My understanding is that maybe they are like sentient armor, is what I was thinking, because they're hollow on the inside.
Yeah, I was thinking like headless horsemen, but they
Yeah,
are hollow
yeah.
too. So
So
yeah.
yeah, I just felt like I needed just like one extra more little clue just to cement that understanding, because I think I came to the appropriate conclusion, because they take off their heads and then that leaves an opening and they're hollow on the inside and the sound rings inside of them. So that seems to imply, and I know that Else is wearing armor, but it doesn't say that they are armor. So that was my confusion, I suppose. Um, and
Mm, true,
that
true.
said, I don't think that this piece would be better served by like right at the beginning having like a little dump about what Dullahans are, right? I don't think I needed that. I like
Yeah.
that I was kind of figuring it out as I went, just like starting off with like, oh, they literally have their head in their laps. Interesting. Okay, sure.
Hmm.
And going from there, that was a fun little part of it.
Which I mean that does branch into the question of how would you explain something like this when every person within this scene obviously already knows what a Dullahan is, you know? So you can't like diegetically explain this to the audience because it would feel out of place. But I think that this story did a pretty good job of using like small lines here and there
To
and
show, yeah.
and description to show us enough to get a good sense of like who these what these characters look like. Maybe not delving in deep into like the back lore of like how they were created, but I think it's enough here already for the purposes of this story.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and I like how that complicates the whole standard fantasy world sort of stuff, and reflecting on that. The thing about goblins was also very neat. A nice little, I don't know, new little world building thing. I quite like it. um,
Mm-hmm.
taking that whole goblins being obsessed with money thing, and then sort of extrapolating that out into an interesting little social custom. Um, yeah, it's very interesting. So regarding like the actual reason that they do it, um, it's interesting. I do wonder. So what do you think like is the sort of message that is coming across in this piece? Because it seems like sort of the lesson that Celia is learning by the end is that like actually sometimes it's not like a super like cynical and like um pragmatic reason for a social custom. Sometimes it's just for like enjoyment and because it's nice,
Mm-hmm.
I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I got something similar that like it is good to question tradition, but then there's also like a level of respectability between both parties. Like yes, even though even though these practices might not make a whole lot of sense, and it's fine to question certain things. There is a point to where like I was even seeing how like the friend character was trying to like let the like main character know that they're being a bit rude, trying to be nice about it. Um, and that sort of shows me the not only the sort of candor that these two characters have, but I kind of got the message that we should respect each other's traditions, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't question them.
Hmm.
At least that's what I was kind of getting from this piece.
Yeah, there's sort of like a sensitivity necessary, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I'm barely related, but I kind of had this conversation recently too about the politeness thing, because I don't know, I got in a conversation with someone about it, but like there's differences between like politeness that is like outdated, just like custom, and then there's others that it's just a nice thing to do, like even now. So like elbows on the table, I feel like it's an outdated like politeness thing. Like I don't think it's ever relevant anymore, basically, right?
Yeah.
But like not eating until everyone sat down, I think that's pretty often just like a nice thing to do, right? Just because it's like you are not like you're not enjoying the thing before anyone else gets to, and they just have to like watch you enjoy yourself.
Yeah,
Um,
and you're also recognizing the other people at the table. Sort of building that connection
mhm.
between those people before you jump into this shared journey. Yeah.
Yeah, that you all get to enjoy something together rather than at separate points, and
Hmm.
yeah, it makes a lot more sense. So I thought that was an interesting reflection on tradition that was going on in this story, and it sort of reminded me of that one. Um, anything else we want to say about the story?
No, I think that's about it. It's a great story, and I'm great that KomatoSoup decided to send this one in.
Hmm. Yeah, it's always good to
Hmm.
see a old face writing again as well.
But all right, it's high time to roll into our listener submitted story section. The first story we will be talking about this week is by Excalibur with an untitled story.
Yeah, so this is actually I'll just read the lines, right?
Yeah.
So they wrote they labeled what it was. They wrote an elegiac couplet that alliterates. Um, so it goes, in our inheritance we hold we the gaunt heads of gathered grain gleanings, to our inheritors hate or acceptable sympathy. So I did do some research on what an elegiac
Mm-hmm.
couplet is, and so it comes from basically epic poetry, basically. And it's sort of like a lower form of it, except it was like very much popularized for one reason or another. The definition was a little opaque because I don't have all of the jargon backing it up. Because it says
Mm-hmm.
the definition of elegiac is of relating to or consisting of two dactylic hexameter lines, the second of which lacks the arsis in the third and sixth feet. Now, I don't know
Yeah.
what arsis is or
That's a lot of
dactylic.
term.
I know what hexameter means. It means 6 feet, and a feet is like a sort of like a syllable pairing of like stressed and unstressed. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but Arceus and Dactylic, I don't, and I need to do more research and learn. So I think it's very cool
Yeah.
that Excalibur put this together, because
Mm-hmm.
it's got to do with a lot of things that I don't have a ton of knowledge about.
Yeah, and I think that's the coolest thing about this short piece is that it's something that I haven't seen be before, and like same as you, I'm definitely gonna look into this further, because it seems that this could be a nice, I guess, form for a lot of meaning, and especially looking at these lines themselves, I can see that it's getting at something.
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, how the inheritors have hate and sympathy, um to those who are inheriting. And I think, like, for me, when I read it, I got a sense of like the haves and the have nots, the
Mm-hmm.
wealthy and the rich. I saw like class struggle within these short little lines, but maybe that's just my own reading.
Mm-hmm. No, I could see it. I think, or at the very least, like something coming from the past and like I don't know, harvesting the past basically, and then
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, people in the future sort of having to deal with the consequences, either like hating the past or sympathizing with it. I suppose I'm not really. I'm not. I've never been very good at poetry, but I like that Excalibur sent this in. Who is our next story?
So the next story is by Ace of Sword with Spite Take,
Yeah, so there are
Part 1.
three parts to this story. The first is this couple being in a helicopter, talking about how they have a tradition of going in helicopters, I suppose. Um, and they talk about how they met, basically. The second story being they are henchmen for a supervillain, and then a superhero comes in and breaks the like just shatters the jaw of the man in the couple. And the woman has some superpowers, but the man does not. And then the final part, they go to a mad scientist to heal um, Dent, the man in the couple. They inject a bunch of DNA into him to fix his face. He ends up having a ton of teeth in his mouth. um, and yeah, so it's interesting. I'm not entirely sure like how like what the tradition that's done at the beginning really is and how it's connected to the other sections. But regardless, I did
Mm-hmm.
enjoy the journey going through it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that this story has some really nice lines of a dialogue mixed with solid description. Um, and yeah, I like also found a bit of trouble seeing how some of these parts linked, but but yeah, I think that this is a really nice basis with some solid world building on something that you can definitely jump off of and continue into this part 2 and part 3. So overall, really great
Hmm.
job.
Yeah, they I think Ace of Sword talks about how there's more of an overarching story that's going to be going on, and so this is just like one part, and I think that's totally fine. Not everything has to be a self-contained thing. Who's next?
Hmm. Up next is by Just Stand 8460 with Sarah and the Wolves Part 3, A New Friend.
Hmm. Yeah, so that is that series with the chicken and the lovely wolf, and here
Ooh.
in this one we finally sort of get Craig the wolf, um, genuinely like apologizing, basically. Well, I say genuinely apologizing regardless, and sort of expressing some kind of affection toward the poor, stressed out chicken. He still seems like he's going to be demanding the weekly eggs, which is a little like,
Of
okay,
course.
you're not even going to like lower it. All right, fine, Craig, I'm watching you. Maybe he'll rethink that later. We'll see. But it's yeah, it definitely seems like there are some feelings going on in there, and it's interesting. And I do wonder what Craig's like thoughts are and why he likes this chicken so much. But we finally finish with our Sarah being alarmed because there is a rooster arriving in the area and probably going to speak to her, and that is actually kind of a really bad thing because roosters basically just like are patriarchs over hens, and hens are kind of supposed to be obedient like housewives immediately, and she's kind of concerned that that's the role that she's going to be put into.
Yeah. So this entry really surprised me in the beginning. I was expecting something a bit more confrontational, which it was. Craig was definitely not a upstanding wolf, in giving Sarah the benefit of the doubt, and also, like maybe not taking all of her eggs. But I do enjoy the direction that the story is progressing. We can see them both getting closer. In a way that I still don't trust Craig, because I'm just worried that Craig's gonna like pull a fast one and like eat her or something. I don't know why though, but yeah, but either way, this is definitely like a nice entry that's sort of pushing it further and is really showing us both of these characters in a setting when they're divorced from the groups that they belong with, so that they can sort of reside as two beings and really communicate.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I am looking forward to seeing where this goes, and yeah, just looking forward to see what else is in this story.
Mm-hmm.
So really great job.
What is the last writer that we'll be talking about this week?
Yes, so the last writer for this week is Walker by Faith with Cause and Effect.
Yeah, and they included helpfully a content warning for child abuse in it, so we do appreciate that. And this basically has to do with a character reflecting after they've gotten older, with the sort of terrible like childhood they had, with a lot of physical punishment from their father, who was very, very, very violent. And so we go through all that, and we're kind of building our sympathy for this main character, and sort of like starting to really hate the father. And because he even makes the main character have to kill this stray dog and like shoot it in the head, which is horrible. But we get justice in the end when Pa gets his legs stuck in a bear trap somehow. And so our main character and his brother go out there with a rifle and just put him down. And
do what you need to.
Yeah, there's sort of a reflection going through here about cause and effect, how the father's actions are what caused his death later on, basically, about how he turned them into people that would kill their own father because he's a terrible person.
Yeah, but yeah, this story is really tight in its themes and its intention, and I just really do like this style. How Walker by Faith is able to really ground scenes, but also show us gruesome stuff, like shooting a dog in the head, and then shooting your own father. But I think that the progression throughout warranted the ending that we got. There is a lot in the beginning setting up how much of a asshole this father is, how abusive he is, so that we naturally sympathize, of course, with the children. But then when the children have to kill their own pa, we are in this uncertain place to where we don't want to see these children become the monster that the parent might have created them to be. But at the same time, we want to see the father get his comeuppance.
Yeah, for sure.
So this is just a really, 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 really great story that I just really love this entry this week. So thank you very much to Walker by Faith.
Yeah, we always love some justice served, of course. And the sort of through line of how the character got this way totally does make sense. I thought though that main character would just like leave the father out there to die, basically.
Yeah.
Because like full on murder, that's pretty hardcore, but
that's pretty metal.
But maybe no one would investigate. Maybe he doesn't have anyone on his side, and they're just like, "Yep, he got eaten by wolves. Sucks. Whoops."
Yeah, sucks to suck.
Yeah.
But all right, I think it's high time to say thank you to everyone who submitted a story this week. So, thank you very much to Excalibur.
Thank you to Ace of Sword.
Thank you, KomatoSoup.
Thank you, JustStand8460.
And thank you to Walker by Faith. And we will also like to say thank you to everyone who did leave comments. Leaving a comment, not only under your own story, but under someone else's, can condense all of your own ideas on your story for others to see, and also provide someone else with crucial feedback so that they and you can become better writers. I would like to say thank you to Ace of Sword, Sithril, KomatoSoup, Walker by Faith, and Just Stand 8460. Thank you so much for leaving comments.
That's right. Additionally, I do want to talk about how Just Stand also posted a group question, which there was some lovely discussion there asking, what is your process for coming up with a story each week? Talking about how it either goes from the whole story flashing in their mind at once, or sort of figuring out what's going to be happening as they go through. And some people reflected upon it. It seems like a lot of people, some have like specific methods, like first thinking of how a character is going to interact with the world, and a conflict, and step by step, and other people talking about how it's more just like discovery. Walker by Faith mentions that it's almost like letting the story free rather than creating it, which is kind of cool. Jarvis, what would you say is your process for coming up with a story?
My process for coming up with stories normally starts well before I ever sit down to actually write a story. I typically write out a lot of lines or descriptions throughout my normal day. So when I do decide to sit down and write, I just follow whatever I've really been thinking about recently. Typically, it'll only start off with a line, but then I start thinking of the context of the line, who's saying the line, how, why, what brought them to saying this line. Just start asking a lot of questions centered around the characters, because character will dictate the story later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What about you?
For me, it's usually like a specific like image or line or something that I'm trying to get to, and then I like start writing to try to get to it, and then I get bored and I just skip to it, and it usually turns out better to just start at the thing. But it's usually just some sort of wrestling with that on having a certain idea that I want to get to, and how to make it work, basically.
Which I get that. If you want to be like all these wonderful writers and submit your story to Do the Right Thing, you could do that by going to Reddit at /r/Do the Right Thing. All you have to do is sit down for 30 minutes to write a complete short story using 3 or 4 randomly generated words.
That's right. If you want to see the words as soon as they come out, the best place to do that would be to follow us on Twitter at RightThingCast. You can also send us an email at rightthingcast@gmail.com just to tell us whatever you want. Additionally, you can join us on the Doof Media Discord at doofmedia.com/Discord, where we have a lot of really interesting discussion. In addition to discussion about Do the Right Thing, there's a discussion about all the other Doof Media shows, including the other podcasts that I've started with Sebastian, The View from Halfway Down, where we cover BoJack Horseman. And there's been some really, really great discussion in that channel, and I've really been enjoying talking with y'all about that show and sort of different theories, and really a lot of just talking about like life and stuff. It's nice. And of course, there's so much else going on at Doof Media all the time. If you haven't checked out some of the other podcasts on the network, please consider doing so. They're delightful. If you haven't listened to Pale in Comparison in a while, consider doing so, and start reading Pact and Pale, both, which are some wonderful urban fantasies.
Well, all right, it's high time to roll into next week's words. So, the words for next week are copy, countryside, wheat, and fun.
So this is I can already see some themes here. So to copy is to make a second version of something that is very, very similar to the first one, identical. Yeah. So you can use a copy machine, which copies images. You can copy and paste. You can copy what someone else is saying and just repeat the same thing back, like a crow. You can copy off of someone's paper and cheat in class.
Also, copy can be used. I've seen it used in the military sense when people are talking over comms, and you say copy when you say that you heard what someone else said.
That's right. And there's other ones. I don't remember what some of the other ones are, but there's other ones. It's great. Oh, carbon copy, which I think is a reference to when there's like is this old way before
You
they had
CC someone.
well, oh yeah, that's true. But the original meaning is when people before copy machines existed and they were writing things by hand, basically, you would have a copy sheet, which is just like a piece of paper you would put under the paper that you're writing on, and the way that it works is you pressing down on the paper above it would basically write on the paper below because it already had like carbon on it. Basically, it had graphite on it. Or something like that. And so you would basically be writing two papers at the same time. And the second one is a carbon copy of the first one. So,
nice.
Yeah, the way to make two letters with one, I guess. But okay, next word is countryside, which is the rural areas of a place. Usually countryside implies like farms and hills and grass.
Small town life.
Yeah, not necessarily like full on like forests, but like there are still people that live there. It's not like a jungle necessarily, but more nature, more of a balance of nature and people. And there you might find wheat, which is a kind of plant that we use to turn into bread. And what kind of alcohol is from wheat?
From wheat?
I think just beer, right?
Beer, because barley. Let's see.
Ale, maybe that might be ale.
Ale? Let's see. I'm going to do a quick addict search. We got vodka. Yes. Vodka. You can make some fire vodka with wheat, apparently.
Among other things. So that's a cool thing. There's some sayings with wheat, I think. Okay. All right, last word is fun, which is when things are enjoyable and you get some sort of joy out of it. Usually it's in a more frivolous way or sort of a baser, more childlike enjoyment of something. It's not like a high art appreciation. It's just like it's fun. You're having a good time.
It's enjoyable, yeah. Like watching a Transformers movie is fun. It doesn't mean a whole lot, but it's fun.
Yeah, and like how I got locked out of my apartment last night, and so I had to parkour up 3 floors. I had to like climb up through like this weird window to get on top of a shed. And it nearly broke. And then I went alongside the building and had to go across a like narrow brick wall ledge and duck under a window so that my downstairs neighbors wouldn't see me sneaking outside on the second floor. And then I had to go up some really slippery ice covered ladders around the back of the building on 2 neighboring buildings' roofs to get onto my roof. That was fun. I had a good time with that.
Yeah. And you even posted a video to Snapchat, and I said it looked very Assassin's Creed-esque, how you were hopping and skipping and jumping.
Yeah, it was a good time. I wanted it to happen again almost. So,
I mean, it could. Just lock yourself out.
All right, Jarvis, very, very quickly, what is your 3-second story?
Yeah, so my 3-second story is about the wheat production in the countryside and how it ended due to the ability to clone and copy anything. So there's no more need to actually grow wheat, no matter how fun that is, because one piece of wheat can be copied to make 1 million pieces of wheat.
I was thinking about that with how digital worlds, all scarcity is artificial scarcity. It was interesting. It's an interesting thought. Yeah, cool.
What about you?
My story has to do with a trip to the countryside just to have fun and games, run in the wheat fields. But this person was out there. She was out there in the wheat fields. And then she saw in the wheat a copy of herself. And it was like exactly the same in every single way, except it was made entirely out of wheat. And she was really, really scared. And she ran away, but it's haunting her. And that's the story for next time.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's awful to run into your own scarecrow
made
copy.
Of Wheaties, yeah.
Made of Wheaties, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you I think the only way to get rid of it is to eat it.
Yeah. Yeah, so you get the cow milk in like a water gun. And you blast it.
Squirt,
and it gets really soggy. And that's how you defeat it.
Oh, and then he melts.
But then you have to eat it.
That would be the best thing to do.
I'm gonna have some cereal.
and milk.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay, good ending. I'm done.